Tom Margenau worked for the Social Security Administration for 32 years. He just updated his guidebook for 2025. My most recent video on some of his analysis got around 130,000 views. Today, let's look at our shared belief that the Social Security Trust Fund will not run out of money anytime soon. Here's 3 reasons. First, and this is less Tom's reason, but this would be political self-destruction. Whether it's Trump, Biden, Republican, Democrats, any party that let this happen would face severe electoral consequences. One of the most reliable voting blocks is, as you can see here on the right on this chart, age 65 plus. If you tell them that their money is going to get cut, or that Social Security in really any manner is going to be tampered with, a lot of the time they're not going to be happy, even if you can make the very clear case that it would be for the good of the country. This is why we see things like Trump, for example, more recently saying that Social Security should be tax-free. Now, we all know that the Social Security Trust Fund is set to deplete with no changes at around 2035. If it's made tax-free, then it would be set to deplete around 2033. So likely, what Trump is doing by making a comment like this is pushing out to the world this message of Social Security should be tax-free, you paid into it, you shouldn't have to pay taxes on it, to kind of buy him some leeway, if you will, to make some of the changes that are necessary. Whether that's raising the full retirement age to 70, lifting the income cap on the Social Security tax, this may be a tactic to kind of buy his way in, saying, hey, look, we're gonna make this tax-free because you earned it. That's a way, of course, people are gonna be on board with that. They don't wanna pay taxes on their Social Security, but on the back end, we might be able to slip in some of these changes. That way, he's not going to lose all of these voters, or at least the Republican Party isn't. So some additional quick points here, and we hit on this one. Voters age 65 have a very high turnout rate. We saw there over 80% of Americans across the party lines oppose Social Security cuts. And then third is there's this fairness principle that so many people resonate to, and rightly so, of I paid into it, I deserve my benefits. And of course, that's going to be the case. If I give money to the government, whether it's to Social Security tax, whether it's through any tax at all, I want that money to be used for my own benefit. If I have to pay 50% taxes because we go into some war, well, I would like that to benefit me, meaning maybe it's just by keeping my country safe or keeping myself safe, defending my rights. But of course, if the government is going to take money from me or I'm going to pay money to the government, I would like that money to be used for my benefit. I would not like to pay money to them and then they give it to someone else and it doesn't benefit me at all, it doesn't really benefit the country, and I get nothing back. So of course, when you have people that really resonate with this, look, I paid into Social Security, I want to get my benefits, it's very difficult for a politician to make changes to that to make them get less, regardless of if this is a big fix that's necessary to get the program or the country back on track. Second, instead of thinking that the trust fund is going to be completely depleted and gone, instead you should likely be asking the question, how might this change? This is a quote here from Tom Margenau in his book. I have always told the young people that they should not be asking, will Social Security be there for you? Instead, they should be asking, how will Social Security change? Another quote from him that came just before that, he says, I have been working for the Social Security Administration or writing about the Social Security program for about 50 years. And for all those years, people have been telling me that the system is doomed for failure and will go belly up in the near future. Yet the program has been paying benefits month after month for 80 years now. How long must Social Security be around before people accept the fact that it is here to stay? Now, I actually don't entirely agree or follow this logic that Tom is using. Just because something has not happened in, say, the past 100 years does not mean that it's not very likely to happen or that it's not going to happen in the future. Not that he's necessarily saying this, but for example, a lot of financial advisors will look at the past 100 years of the stock market and then run projections based on that using like a Monte Carlo simulation, for example, and say, here is the probability of success, here's how much income you could expect through all of these different periods, and then act like that is some sort of infallible resource. Of course, however, we're in a much different situation than we've ever been in before. Hyperinflation, at least to an extreme extent, hasn't happened very often, at least we'll say in the last 100 years, just conservatively. That does not mean that it could not happen very soon because of national debt, because of the deficit, because of the Social Security Trust Fund, for example, just to name a few reasons. Now, a couple things here. Change has been in the history of Social Security. So we have the original full retirement age was 65 for those born before 1938. Eventually, they gradually did increase this to 67, but it wasn't like a one-year change. It was over a large period. Changes ranged across an over 20-year period. So you can see it slowly rose month by month for those born from 1938 to 1959, and of course, now it is 67. So this again is a historical example of how usually they're gonna make changes as opposed to just letting the whole system collapse. And again, even if the trust fund was depleted, it would just have to be cut. Benefits would have to be cut to about 80%. So the amount of money that's going in can be paid out as opposed to just wiping the system out entirely. Now, here are some changes that you could make if you totaled these up to 100% that could save Social Security. These are straight from Tom Margenau's book. Again, Social Security, Simple and Smart. So it's either cut benefits or raise revenues. First, we'll talk about cutting benefits. So if you raise the full retirement age to 70 by 2063, so again, doing that gradually, that alone is about a 68% fix. However, you still need to have this totaled to 100. You can kind of read through some of the other cut benefit ones here. Also, raising revenues. So the main one here is taxing all earnings. A lot of people have proposed this. Instead of capping it at that 176.1 thousand, which would be a very large fix, remove that cap, have all income be taxed on Social Security, almost a 73% fix. And then I put here at the top, you would have to have this sum up to more than 100 if Trump does make this tax-free, because of course, the Social Security Trust Fund is set to deplete by 2035. If we reduce some of the revenue that's coming in, it goes back to 2033, so this would have to be greater than 100%. Hey, real quick, if you're finding this helpful, leave a like and let me know. Back to it. Reason number 3, if the Social Security Trust Fund is going to be depleted, it's probably going to be a very long process to get there. Main reason ties in exactly with that first one, and that is a solution has to also win over the voters. If you are going to say, look, Social Security is this system that we created in the 1930s to basically force people to save, and for a number of reasons, we think it would be economically sound or better for the country to completely eliminate the system, to have these sort of welfare programs go maybe a little bit to the state, some to local churches or whatever. If you are going to take that stance, still, you have to convince the people who are receiving Social Security checks that even though they paid into it for this long, they're going to have to cut their benefits. And even people that may hold to that exact opinion that I just outlined, it's hard for them to see they are going to have a bias towards receiving the money that they currently need to live. For example, let's say they know that they need to do that. They know that this is best for the country's future. But if they cut their Social Security checks by, say, 25%, they're not going to be able to afford rent. How do you think they're going to vote? So again, this is likely why this change, if it were to happen, would be over decades, not something that actually runs out in 2035. Of course, all of this is my opinion, some of the facts supported by Tom Margenau's book, Social Security, Simple and Smart. If you're within 10 years of retirement in the US, subscribe. I release videos for you twice a week on how to do that peacefully.